Welcome, everyone. Welcome as you are coming in. It is really nice to see your faces, some that look familiar, others that I can't wait to meet. We are so excited that you've joined us here tonight, and we'll just take a minute for all of you to get here and the stragglers to come on in, the folks who are arriving from different times in the galaxy. I am actually in Central Time today and getting used to it being an hour early than it usually is for me. And so wherever you are arriving from and however you are arriving, we are so very glad that you are here. I am Reverend Sarah Bowen. Tonight I am Leia. That's another of my favorite people to be, and personalities and roles and archetypes to play with. And I am joined tonight by two of my favorite fellow heroines in the world, Reverend Jen Schrad and Reverend Diane Emerald. And so we are going to introduce you to all of us as we get going here tonight. But first, just a couple of housekeeping items for you. The first is, if you do not have something to write with and something to write on, if you could go ahead and grab something. We're going to use it a little later today, but we're giving you fair warning that you're going to need something to write with and something to write on. The other thing is, we expect once Diane and Jen and I get in blazoned in this and get going, that we're probably not going to have our Ion chat. There's going to be some time for us all to share at the end of what's going on tonight. In the end of probably the last about 15 to 20 minutes of tonight, we're going to hear from all of you. But until then, if you put something in chat, we may not see it. It's not because we're trying to be rude, it's because we are in the moment. So just wanted you all to know that. And I'm going to ask David to start us. You know, we're here at One Spirit. We always start with a piece of music. And so we are going to ask him to play an epic piece of music, ask you to sink into your seats with a couple of deep breaths, or wherever those seats may be, whether they seem to be on the earth today, in a chair, in a starship, wherever they are, to listen to this for about a minute and a half, take a couple deep breaths, and arrive. Not our normal meditation music, is it? It is our contention tonight that spirituality can be soft and sweet and silent, and it can also be loud and fierce and adventurous and energetic and all of those things too. So we're going to be taking you through a couple of journeys tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share some slides and talk to you a little bit about, as your tour guide here. Let's see, there we go. All right. Tell you a little bit about what you're in for this evening. We are so excited that you're here. So as I said, Reverend Diane, Reverend Jen, and Reverend and I are going to be hosting you this evening. We each come to this through a different myth, through a different experience, and we're going to be sharing both our stories from those, a little bit of our inspiration, and then leading you through a practice, leading you through a meditation or a ritual or something that you can drop into through each of these different gateways tonight. So we're going to start with Star Wars, and then we're going to go to Wonder Woman, and then we're going to go to Lord of the Rings. So those are the three different kind of gates or doorways we're going to enter tonight. So here we go. So I'm going to start with Leia. And Leia is the heroine that most inspired me because she taught me that I could grow up to run as fast as and fight as hard as any boy at a time that I wasn't receiving that message from other people around me. And I could do that even if I was wearing a dress. Didn't really like to wear a dress, but my mother put me in a dress all the time. And, if I had one, it had to look like Leia. For me, it was Leia that the divine feminine appeared. I learned about my sexual identity at a very young age, that I had a crush on Han Solo and Leia. And I wasn't sure exactly what to do with that, but within this story, I could try to figure out a little bit about myself and about gender roles and sexuality and about what was right and what my values were. And then kind of interestingly, I also learned to be careful what you wish for, because my life very much paralleled Leia's, or more so the actress behind the character in Carrie Fisher. Both of us battled addiction. Both of us fought the stigma attached to depression and hypomania, which I refer to as having occasional really strong fluctuations in my force. Perhaps you've seen those sometimes. And beyond Leia and Carrie, this story of Star Wars, it really got deep, deep, deep into my DNA. It was something that I couldn't shake. I'm in Mexico on vacation right now, and I walked by a store that had this shirt full of Star Wars, and my husband said to the person we're visiting with, "Please don't let her see that shirt." But of course I saw that shirt, and I bought that shirt. And I also often tend to wear this shirt. Yeah, there we go. There's my heroine, folks. Fully embodied, so much so that she's on the back of my Jeep, and my license plate says FORCBWU. This myth took on a life of its own within my life. And of course, in seminary, I found out, okay, there's more to it than just this wonderful movie. Like many people, I dug into the work of Joseph Campbell. I found out why Star Wars remained so important to me. And I learned about the hero's journey. How many folks have heard about the hero's journey? This wonderful idea that in all of our stories, whether it's Harry Potter or Star Wars, or it's The Matrix, or it's Lion King, or it's any of the Holy Grail stories, or it's any epic adventure, that there are these different kind of stages that we go through. There's these different things about how we have a trusty sidekick, about how we go on an adventure, how we lose ourselves, how we find ourselves, a call to adventure, and what that looks like. And I realized that that story could become really useful in my ministry. And so I started writing about it. Now, all my seminary fellows thought it's a little weird, Sarah's spiritual path is Star Wars. And I thought, well, no, it's not. The Force has Zoroastrianism and Buddhism, and it's got Christianity. It's got all those religions packed in it. So I started to write about it. But I also realized that there were parts of my heroine that I wasn't willing to own. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. When I read the Princess Diarist, Carrie Fisher's novel, or her memoir, she talked about the frustration of being middle-aged in a fan event and having young men approach her to sign the infamous bikini photo. Now, she was in her 50s and 60s, and everyone wanted her to still look like this. These are the women of Comic-Con in 2009, and they're pretty happy looking like that. I'm not pretty happy looking like that. I'm pretty happy looking like this. And I had to start thinking about, well, why is that? And that's when I discovered the heroine's journey. How many people have heard of the heroine's journey? A couple of us, right? So Maureen Murdoch, and this is quite interesting because my maiden name is Murdoch with an H, so go figure. wrote a book in the 1990s. And what she did is she took Campbell's work and she said, well, there's a 7-step process to the journey in our society that is talking about masculine values. How do we bring in the feminine? And what she realized is a lot of us ditch the feminine for the masculine so that we can show up, so that we can compete, so that we can be successful, so that we can be strong, so that we can be fierce. We take on the masculine. But what we need to do is to be able to come back, meet with the goddess, reconcile with the feminine, reincorporate that masculine, and we have this union of all of those. Of course, my union ended up finding out I was agender and I threw them both out. But it's a very, very useful tool for those of us who are trying to take on these masculine, or what is masculine, what is feminine, right? So Maria Tatar also just had a book out just recently. She is the professor of folklore and mythology and Germanic languages and literature at Harvard, so she knows a little bit about a lot. And in the intro to her recent book, she tells a story that I'd like to tip us off for tonight. This is a story about a student who walked into Joseph Campbell's office and told him that she had heard enough about the hero in comparative mythology class. She said, "What about the women?" And in response, Campbell said, "Well, the woman is the mother of the hero. In the archetype, she's the protectress of the hero. And she's the woman who the hero wants to win at the end of his journey." And Campbell said to the student, "What more do you want?" And Campbell's student said, "I want to be the hero." So tonight, we want you to be the hero or the heroine or whatever word you like to put around that, using Wonder Woman, Lord of the Rings, and Star Wars. So I'm going to stop the share for a moment. I'm going to take you to a galaxy far, far away. I'm going to invite you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes. Take a few breaths. Notice that we can breathe here without having to have a helmet on here on Earth. Notice that our feet are on the ground thanks to that thing we call gravity. We might hear different sounds around us. Probably sitting in a chair rather than floating around. What is that like? And here on Earth, what were you told when you were playing as a child about who you could be, what you could do, what colors you should wear, what kind of clothing you should wear, what kind of hair was appropriate, kind of body ornamentation, how you should be referred to by others? Picture yourself at that age when you used to play out the movies with your little action figures or your Barbie dolls, your stuffed animals. Or if you had unfortunate cats like I did that got put capes on, drapes around the house as Super Cat. Sorry, him. Notice how this feels in your body. Is there perhaps some laughter and some smiles and some recollections? And perhaps some pangs. I feel a couple pangs about the color pink and about having pants that didn't have pockets in them because I was a girl. About getting my shoes dirty. Something about wearing white. Certain times of the year was okay, and other times of the year wasn't, but Leia wore white all year round. And into any of those spaces, if you find any of those little spaces that don't feel quite right or overtly, imagine stars raining down into that space from the galaxy far, far above. Bright, maybe tingly, they might tickle. Sparkly, shiny. Perhaps they have slightly rough edges and they push out the things that don't belong in those spaces, transforming them, alchemizing them, or absorbing them and turning them into star stuff. As you breathe in, you can breathe in this light, this metallicness, lightness, levity, floatiness, the lack of heaviness or gravity or cavernous spaces filled with stars, filled, filled, filled. And perhaps with them came new beings, new intelligences, new ways of thinking, new ways of seeing. Now from that place, imagine from the inside, you have the power to look any way you want on the outside. You can be a 50-year-old woman wearing a cape, a woman wearing a metal suit, a different species even perhaps, with eyes that recall fishes and tails that recall galactic dragons, covered in fur like a Wookiee, short like an Ewok, tall like a Klingon. What would you look like? Or would you look exactly like you do right now? Or might you vacillate between the two? And now knowing that any time you close your eyes, that this can be your adult play, that this can be your taking on of archetype and role. At any moment during your day, when you hear the words, I can't, or you shouldn't, you can return your awareness to the star stuff in those spaces and say, I can. And please don't tell me what I can and cannot do, who I should and should not be. I am this. And now shaking your fingers and your body and your voice. Stretching. We return fully to this galaxy, wherever you happen to be. And we prepare for our next adventure. And for that, I am going to turn you over to the amazing, amazing wonder and awe filled being that I know, Reverend Jen.
Welcome all. I'm Reverend Jen. Please go ahead and grab whatever pen or paper that you were instructed to grab at the beginning to take some notes. I'm going to start with a personal story. As a tot, my heroine was Wonder Woman. Beautiful, strong, justice fighter, and feminist icon. I didn't just look up to her, I wanted to be her. And according to my family lore, my parents took me shopping for my very own Wonder Woman underoos. You have to remember, this is in the late 1970s. I'm about 3. The way that my mother tells the story, I woke up early in time for the Saturday morning cartoon, eager to try on my Wonder Woman uniform. And I believed it would give me the same powers as our Amazonian princess. But when my powers failed to materialize, I had a complete meltdown. In my first, not last, identity crisis, I screamed in disbelief that it wasn't working. Where's my invisible jet? This is the beginning of my love for Wonder Woman and my heroine's journey to my own authenticity as a queer, fiery advocate who believes in justice and fighting for truth with love. I invite all who are here with us live tonight or who are watching later on a later date to embrace your inner Wonder Woman, regardless of gender identity or other labels. Because Wonder Woman is a mindset, and she belongs to everybody who seeks to emulate her. So grab your pen and paper. Over the next few minutes, you're going to hear a rapid fire herstory of my beloved Wonder Woman's heroine's journey. And as you listen and view the images, take note of what stands out to you. Just make a mess on your page. Jot down words or phrases or impressions that stand out to you, but don't give it much thought. Suffering Sappho, here we go. Fact number 1. Diana of Themyscira is queer, and that is canon, as confirmed by DC Rebirth comic writer Greg Rucka in 2016, who said, "It makes no logical sense otherwise." But first, let's go back to our creators of Wonder Woman, the Marston family. Princess Diana's 3 creators were in a polyamorous family who kept their relationship a secret. I highly recommend reading the Harvard historian Jill Lepore's epic book, The Secret History of Wonder Woman, 2014, for a wild and a beautiful look into the lives of our Amazonian princesses' creators. Suprema the Wonder Woman is the collective imaginings of William Moulton Marston, scholar, psychologist, co-inventor of the systolic blood pressure test, the precursor to the polygraph lie detector, and the forerunner to Wonder Woman's unbreakable golden lasso of truth, along with his wife, Sarah Sadie Elizabeth Holloway, married in 1915. Lepore writes in Secret History that Holloway grew up liking to pretend that she was a boy and that she was fierce, picky, and fearless. She was a psychologist and an attorney, a feminist, a suffragette who fought for the women's movement. Olive Burns' mother, Ethel Byrne, and her aunt, Margaret Sanger, were two of the most influential suffragette feminists of the 20th century. They were champions of birth control and pioneers for women's rights. In 1925, Olive Byrne became Marston's student and research assistant, and then the domestic partner of both Marston and Holloway. Though the nature of their family was kept hidden, Byrne wore large silver bracelets gifted to her by Marston to honor their love, an element that would become an iconic part of Wonder Woman's Amazonian uniform and superpowers, which could dodge bullets and deflect them. After Marston's death, Holloway and Byrne continued to live together until Byrne's death in 1990 at the age of 86. Holloway died in 1993 at the age of 100. This Wonder Woman was created by this alternative family. And there she is, the beauty of Aphrodite and the wisdom of Athena, the strength of Hercules and the speed of Mercury. But let's skip to her origin story, shall we? In the temple for Aphrodite, Queen Hippolyta wished for a child. She was given clay from Mount Olympus, which she formed into a child who came to life exclaiming, "Mama, give me the moon!" Her queen mother decided to give her the name Diana, after the goddess of the moon. On Paradise Island, Princess Diana grew in beauty, strength, speed, wisdom, athleticism, with a mind for strategy, combat skills, psychic powers, and a strong desire for freedom. She was gifted with the unbreakable magic lasso that carries Aphrodite's love power and compels all who are bound with it to obey and speak the truth. The comics introduced American Army intelligence officer Captain Steve Trevor, whose plane crashed and washed ashore. Diana saved him and returned him to America in her silent, invisible plane. And there she disguised herself as Diana Prince, nurse. The comics of the 1940s treated us to quite a tale. Adventures and fighting crime, seeking justice through wisdom and love and secret identity. There's a deliberate nod to the iconography of the suffragettes in the early 1900s, who often wore chains on their marches seeking the right to vote. But it was also deliberately titillating. The early comics will show her and the Amazonians in bondage, but she and the other captives on Paradise Island always escape. Nonetheless, from the beginning, there's controversy. Wonder Woman was put on a blacklist in the 1940s because she was insufficiently dressed. And after Marston's death in 1947, DC Comics appointed Robert Kanigher as the editor, and he happened to believe that women's political equality was a mistake, one that could be easily undone. And under his rule, Wonder Woman grew weaker every year. And there she is, our Wonder Woman, put on the cover of Ms. Magazine by none other than Gloria Steinem, who said, "Looking back now at these Wonder Woman stories from the 1940s, I'm amazed by the strength of their feminist vision, message." But there's controversy, of course. And there's infighting, and our Wonder Woman is caught in the crossfire of people wondering, is Wonder Woman a sellout of everything the feminist movement stood for? Was she a strategy to destroy women's lib? Could women be feminist, sexual, fierce, and loving? And who gets to decide? Our Wonder Woman has appeared on television, portrayed by Kathy Lee Crosby and the great Tiara boomeranging Linda Carter. She's been in animation and portrayed in various films. However, my heart belongs to director Patty Jenkins' films, where she is portrayed by Gal Gadot in Wonder Woman in 2017 and Wonder Woman 1984 in 2020. Great Hera! In October of 2016, Wonder Woman was made the United Nations Honorary Ambassador for the Empowerment of Women and Girls. But it took less than 2 months for critics of this move to petition loudly enough for the UN to unceremoniously strip her of her role. Controversy. Her story continues. Take a moment, just a brief moment now, and look at your notes. What did you write down? And what wisdom might be gleaned about your own heroine's journey, or hero's journey, or Hero X's journey? Do you see any themes or stops along your own call to adventure, controversies, battles, or ordeals? Later, when you have some more time, circle 3 words or phrases that you wrote down that stand out to you the most, and try to notice how they might show up for you in your life in the coming days. I close this portion of our evening with a photo of myself emulating my beloved Wonder Woman at a protest, and with a quote from the great Patty Jenkins' epic Wonder Woman film. I used to want to save the world, to end war and bring peace to mankind. But then I glimpsed the darkness that lives within their light. I learned that inside every one of them, there will always be both. The choice each must make for themselves, something no hero will ever defeat. I've touched the darkness that lives in between the light, seen the worst of this world and the best, seen the terrible things men do to each other in the name of hatred, and the lengths that they'll go to for love. And now I know only love can save this world. So I stay and I fight and I give for the world I know can be. This is my mission now, forever. Over now to Diane.
My name is Diane Bronovich Egelhoff. My name, Emerald, is one of my spiritual names. So I often go by Diane Emerald here in One Spirit, especially since we have a very famous Diane who founded the organization. When Sarah first asked me to do this, she said, do you want to do Lord of the Rings? And she said, oh, you can be Galadriel. And I was like, Galadriel. And there's nothing wrong with Galadriel. She's a very powerful, important character in Lord of the Rings. But when we're talking about heroine's journey, the heroine's journey is Eowyn. And so here we see a picture of this collector's edition that my parents got me for when I was my 16th birthday. We have this Eowyn figurine that stays on my desk and watches over me at all times. And we also have my nerd sword that I got for Christmas the year the Two Towers came out. This is Eowyn's sword that she uses to decapitate the dragon and kill the Nazgul. And it's one of my prized possessions. And I'm just going to talk to you all about her story and a little bit about my own story and what Eowyn means to me and how I think that we can learn from her about who we want to be, and trying to talk to people who tell us that what we want to be is not the right thing to be. When I was a little girl, I was actually very, very femme. I used to refer to myself as a tomboy in skirts. When I was about 3, I told my mother that girls were so much luckier than boys because girls could wear skirts and pants and boys could only wear pants. And wasn't that just amazing? But so I was definitely not, averse to being femme and being girly girl. But, I was also the oldest girl on both sides of the family. On my dad's side of the family, I had 5 older male cousins. And we would go to my grandmother's house, and they would all be going down to the creek to be playing in the water and skipping stones, or they would be going to the schoolyard to play basketball. And I was never allowed to go with them. Even though my cousin Tom was only a year older than me, but he was a boy. Tom's a boy. You need to stay here with my baby sister. And I had to stay at home with the adults and the baby. And the boys got to go off and do things that were like way much more fun and way much more important than the things that I had to do. It wasn't that I didn't want to do typical girl things, but I really wanted to do the boy things too. And I read Lord of the Rings in early adolescence, and I immediately identified with Eowyn. And it's easy to identify with her because she is a badass woman character, but she's really more than that. And that's what I really wanted to explore. Melissa McCroy Hatcher, she points out in an article called Finding Women's Role in the Lord of the Rings, that in Eowyn's journey, J.R.R. Tolkien illustrates his highest ideals through Eowyn and her journey. Having lived through World War I, he thinks that fighting is necessary when you have to fight, but peace and healing and growth and nurturing is the highest ideal for mankind. But exploring her ritual arc for this particular ritual, I found out that her arc follows the heroine's journey to the ultimate integration of the masculine and the feminine. So to talk about her story arc briefly, and I have a lot of quotes I can throw at you because Tolkien set out to write a mythology for England. That's what the Lord of the Rings really is. And his words are myth, they're modern myth, and they're very, very powerful. But I don't want to speak too many of his words. I do want to speak more of my own, but I do want to share with you some things that he says about her. So she grows up, she's the daughter of kings, and she's taught to fight just like her brother. They're a warrior culture. They're very sort of Norse, and they ride horses, and her uncle is the king. Her culture's ethos is that battle and glory are to be striven for, and they're really the most important things in life. Gandalf the wizard says to her, about her, to her brother, says, "My friend, you had horses and deeds of arms in the free fields, but she, being born in the body of a maid, had a spirit and courage at least the match of yours. Yet she was doomed to wait upon an old man whom she loved as her father and watch him falling into mean, dishonored dotage. And her part seemed to be all the more ignoble than it was the staff that he leaned on." So if you remember the story, Saruman, the one bad wizard, comes and takes over his mind, and he becomes this doddering old man, and finally Gandalf comes and frees him from this. Then there's a big battle. They go and fight Saruman, and it's the Battle of Helm's Deep. And she, of course, wants to go. She is raised as a shield maiden. She's been taught to fight. And they're like, nah, well, we need somebody to stay here and look after the non-combatants. You know, you are royalty, you're a leader, you need to do that. And so she does. She realizes that there's wisdom in that she needs to do that. But, you know, after the Battle of Helm's Deep, they win the battle. Her uncle's free from Saruman's clutches. The Battle of Gondor approaches, and she wants to do what she was trained for. She wants to go and fight. And she is talking about this with Aragorn, who's sort of the, you know, the king in the Return of the King. He's a battle leader. And she says to him, "Too often have I heard of duty," she cried. "But am I not the House of Errol, a shield maiden and not a dry nurse? I have waited on faltering feet long enough. Since they falter no longer, it seems, may I not now spend my life as I will?" So she's tired of being caged. She's tired of being left behind, and she wants to be able to make full use of her talents. And most importantly, she wants to make her own choices. So everybody else goes off to the battle, and she and the Hobbit Merry are left behind. Like her, she's seen as, you know, he's small. He's not seen as being a great warrior. He's not going to be able to be any good in battle. He's left behind with her. And she decides that, no, she doesn't need anybody's permission. She's going to go and fight. She's going to fight this battle just like everyone else, just like what she was trained to do. Which ends up being pretty important because there's a certain prophecy about this Nazgul, one of the big bads that she faces, that can't be killed by any man. So she has to dress up like a man to be able to like disguise herself. She calls herself Durnhelm, and she goes into battle, and she brings Merry with her. So she gets to the battle, and her uncle is down, his knights are down, and she stands up to the Nazgul, the evil creature of the shadow who's riding on this giant dragon type creature. And this is how he describes it in the book. Then Mary heard of all sounds in that hour the strangest. It seemed that Dernhelm laughed, and the clear voice was like the ring of steel. But no living man am I. You look upon a woman. Eowyn I am, Eowyn's daughter. You stand between me and my lord and king. Begone if you be not deathless, for living or dark undead, I will smite you if you touch him. And then, tottering, struggling up with her last strength, she drove her sword between crown and mantle, and as the great shoulders bowed before her, the sword broke, sparkling into many shards. The crown rolled away with a clang, and Eowyn fell forward upon her fallen foe. So, she's also gravely injured. She ends up at this place called the Houses of the Healing, where she is healed by Aragorn in terms of her physical ailments, but she's still not well. She's still sick at mind and sick at heart. And this is where she meets Faramir. And I never really, until researching for this particular ritual, appreciated just how important Faramir is. He's the brother of Boromir, who in the first movie, like, goes evil and tries to take the ring from Frodo and, use it to try to fight against the dark, and eventually, dies because he's Sean Bean and he dies. And so she meets Faramir, and unlike his brother, who's only this sort of toxic masculine person, he's very balanced with his warrior side and his nurturing side. She says of him, and she looked at him and saw the grave tenderness in his eyes, and yet knew, for she was bred among men of war, that here was one no rider of the mark would outmatch in battle. So he was not, he was definitely kind, but he was also tough. And as the two of them get to know each other, as they heal together, they learn, and she learns really within herself, that there's more to life than just battle, that fierceness and tenderness can coexist. And he says to her, do not pity the gift of a gentle heart, Eowyn, but I do not offer you my pity, for you are a high lady and valiant, and have won yourself renown that shall not be forgotten. And you are a lady beautiful, I deem, beyond even the words of the elven tongue to tell. And I love you. I once pitied your sorrow, but now were you sorrowless, without any fear or lack, were you the blissful queen of Gondor, still would I love you. Eowyn, do you not love me? And then the heart of Eowyn changed, or else at last she understood it. And suddenly her winter passed and the sun shone on her. No longer she decides to be a shield maiden. She's not going to, as she says, take joy only in the songs of slaying. She says, I will be a healer and love all things that grow and are not barren. And Faramir says, here is Lady Eowyn of Rohan, and now she is healed. Now some will say that her marrying this guy and putting away her shield maiden days is her just, is the patriarchy taking over and her just, being tamed. But that's not true at all, because one of the things that you need to understand about Eowyn and about this story is that, and about Tolkien, is that you need to fight when you have to fight. You pick up the sword when it's time to fight, but there is a time for healing. There is a time for nurturing. She talks about her and Faramir are going to go and create a garden in the new place where they live. And so one of the things that this really teaches me is that it's okay to be the girly girl. It's okay to be pretty, to own your sexuality, to wear the sexy clothes, to be, wearing makeup. But you can also do all the so-called boy things just as well as any boy. You get to choose your own path, and that even though you might be a warrior, the time for nurturing is also going to come to you. And I want you to think about, as we move on to the next section of this ritual, what I've learned from this story. And I'm thinking back about times where there are times when you don't get to do the glamorous thing, that sometimes you have to sit at home and work behind the scenes. And sometimes that's really important. And sometimes you have to buck the system, though, and somebody's going to tell you can't do that. But if she hadn't gone out and killed and fought that Nazgul, they would have all been screwed. Nobody else is going to take it down but her and Mary together. And so sometimes you have to stand up and find that courage within yourself, not only to do the thing, but to tell people that you can do the thing. And then, sometimes it's okay to then set that sword down. Just because, you decide that you want to live a more healing, calmer life now after the war is over, doesn't mean that all of her strength was for nothing. That's just that she is choosing to embrace a different part of herself. And I do believe within her and Faramir, the masculine and the feminine are very well balanced, not just because they're a man and they're a woman, but there are these qualities that are traditionally ascribed as masculine or feminine that are present in both. And as Tolkien wants us to believe and see that it's really important to be able to, after you have to pick up your sword and go for battle, you need to nurture, you need to heal, and you need to regrow. And that is his highest ideal. So you get to be whatever you want. You can be as pretty in this, wearing skirts as much as you want, or you can dress however you want, you can be however you want. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it, and don't tell anybody to tell you that you have to do it. You get to choose what you do, you choose your own path. And that is what Eowyn means to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. I'm just going to take a moment to witness that you've all just heard 3 very different stories, with some striking similarities. 3 different experiences of people who've grown up in different places, who've had different influences, who've had different challenges. And it very much resonates for me right now as we see a lot of people struggling to accept others in their identities, what we can learn from hearing other people's stories in this way of hearing it through myth, hearing it through epic, hearing it through what some people might call entertainment, which goes so much deeper. These stories that we learn as children are indeed part of our DNA, and they blossom as we grow into adults, and they cannot be split. They cannot be taken out of from who we are. And so I just want to take a minute to go back into your own experience, knowing that probably parts of my story and Jen's story and Diane's story, there may have been parts which felt, oh yeah, and there have been parts, what are they talking about? That, that our stories are each our own story, that we can sit in that, but we can also learn with vulnerability that comes with hearing other people share something that may seem a little less mainstream than what we normally talk about in spirituality. What might happen if we make space for these epic adventures, for these sacred texts? What might happen when we let people show up? Well, not that we need to let people, but when we encourage people to show up with these parts of their personalities as well. So let's just take a minute, go back into that ooey, beautiful space when we close our eyes of absolute possibility and potential. The space of anything happens when we pull down that curtain or close those drapes. We don't see the world in which we're sitting. Think for a minute about the communities that you're in, the challenges they might be having, or within your family, or within a relationship with a friend or a partner, or a unique family constellation. What might it be like? Tell me about your favorite myth, your favorite epic. What might it be like for dinner or for communion to set out big goblets with dragons and jewels for that ritual? What might it be like to encourage people to show up in not their daily dress. To ask your students or your children to read aloud to you from their sacred texts. Can you take these ideas away from tonight? Not only in the fun times we have at Comic-Con or playing dress up, but in the deep, deep, deep spaces that we normally reserve for silence. An age-old text that someone else has called canon. Thank you for going there with us. And on that messy piece of paper Jen asked you to write about, maybe you have a word or two you might want to put down as, I have an idea of something I might like to try. I have a ritual or a meditation or something I might want to remember from this moment. I got some sacred sendoffs to do for some dragons here, it sounds like. Those of you who know me, I'm an animal person. Can figure out how to reframe dragons. The scary beasts in our lives. It's what I'm going to take away from here. And we have about 6 or 7 minutes left. So we're wondering if any of you, if there was anything that touched you tonight, or if there was anything that irritated you tonight, or if there was any thought you have that you'd like to share going out from this, we would love to hear from you. You can raise your real hand or your virtual hand, and we'll bring you on into the space. Okay, we'll start with Dominique.
Hi, I advocate for children in the juvenile justice system at times and volunteer work there. And I think this is a great process when I'm ministering to the juveniles to help them make decisions in the process, to reach inside of themselves and then make decisions through this process of visualization that we've done tonight. So thank you.
Wonderful. Let us know how that goes. Yeah. Lisa.
Hi. I can't remember which one of you talked about a practice, but it's really powerful. Like I was reminded how powerful it is. And it's kind of, I studied Egyptian magic, and it's part of this, it sounded just like it, where you're stepping into the God form before you say the prayers for the blessings. And so stepping into that form of the embodiment of all that you want to be, that meditation, it really does make you feel different. It just makes you feel different. I just noticed that tonight.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, it's interesting. We talk a lot about non-duality. We talk about oneness. We talk about, different ways of kind of shifting things. And what is it? What is it when we can do that? My husband and I, you reminded me of something. We're in Mexico right now, and we were at some Mayan ruins yesterday, and we did the 64 steps, all the way up to the top of one. And it's my husband's 69th birthday. And I said, well, you got to go, and you got to come back down and do 5 more steps, just to make it work. But when we were at the top, we were really talking about these different ways of looking at human and divine, and the different ways in different systems of what is that line between, and what is that. And when he came down, I said, the guide told me that you're now a turtle man god. And my husband looked at me. He's like, Sarah, stop it. And I said, well, what would it be like if you were? What would it be like if you were? So it's gone to his head, and today he's been a little bit hard to handle. But, what would it be like? Yeah. We could live into our full power. How amazing. Julie, Rev Julie, let's hear from you.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, Jen. Hi, Diane. Thank you so much for tonight. Sarah, you might remember that I just recently moved back to my childhood home. And tonight, thank you so much for lifting the veil on some more memories that I can play with. And because I'm in this place where I played with my brother, I was Leia. And he was my brother. He was Luke. And, the Legos that we played with and built Star Wars ships and the exploring that we did in the woods, in pretending we were in Lord of the Rings. So I am so grateful tonight for the reminder of what it was, how I was influenced, what it was like to play, but also how I was influenced, and just hadn't paid a whole lot of attention to that. So thank you, all of you. This is brilliant.
You just made me think of something too, Julie. Like, what if we hauled those books out of our attic, if they're there, or off our bookshelves and dusted them off? And what if we put them on our nightstands? And what if before we went to bed, we read from those stories? What if we brought those into our going to sleep consciousness? What might we unleash there? Yeah, thank you. Debbie, what have you got for us? There you go.
Did it work? Okay.
Yeah, it did. Welcome, Debbie.
Thank you. Hey, well, I'm glad to have participated in this. I did write down some things, but some of it was more from the beginning. But I mean, I loved all of it. But I wrote down a lot of what y'all said at the beginning about that we shouldn't, nobody can tell us anymore that we can't or we shouldn't. You know, women have been treated that way forever. And I've allowed myself to be treated that way many times in my life. So that's kind of really important with some things that are going on for my own personal journey right now. Is that no one can tell me how I should act or be or what I should do, and I like that very much. I feel like I'm very well read, but I'll just want to comment that um, I'm familiar with the hero's journey and lots of things regarding that, but I wasn't familiar with the heroine's journey. So I wrote down that and those book titles, and I'm going to look those up and seek those out. I enjoyed everybody's perspective. I wrote down like 3 different pages of notes. So I gained a lot from this. I'm sorry to see more people didn't show up. It's very meaningful. Thank you for doing this.
You bet, Debbie. We get a lot of people, especially in the summer too, on the YouTube. So hey, you YouTube future people, hello. Back in time, we could do a whole Back to the Future thing on that too, right? I don't know that there's so much that's ripe for here. So we're so glad you're here, Debbie, and that this has been meaningful to you. And when this will be on the One Spirit YouTube page as well. So if you want to come back and rediscover some of this, or if there's people that you're talking to and you'd like to give them the link, to go ahead and take a look and just figure, what are the ways that we can do this, that we can bring these stories out. I know that a couple of years ago, one of my favorite other books, back in my other persona, in my Can't Stop Talking to You About Critters persona, The Velveteen Rabbit was a story that was so very meaningful to me, and I've given that to a lot of people and read that story. And I did a book event this weekend down here in Mexico, and someone gave me a book called The Rabbit and the Bear, I think it's called. I don't know. It was this beautiful children's book that she had gifted me, and I was thinking about even pre these big myths. What about those, the board books, right? What about the board books that were influential for us? What about Goodnight Moon and, some of those other things, or Where the Wild Things Are, or were, or whatever that title was. But, what can we go back and mine out of our attics that might also tell us what's ripe for healing, or what's, what might explain how we got to where we are today. So, yeah, book addict for sure. And we are just about time here. So, any last call? Any other thoughts? Well, it has been really beautiful to spend this time with you. It is especially beautiful. These two ladies, I know from the beginning of their seminary journeys. I met them on day one of their seminary journeys. They were my students, and so I have seen a lot of their journey. And to see them as these amazing, stunning, fierce and soft and girly and tomboy and everything, to see them as everything that they are and everything that they're doing in the world with swords and with their activism, their beautiful work that they do for others. It really, you two, it really is so beautiful to see what you're doing in the world. So we all combined a blessing for you. And we're going to see how this goes. We stole shamelessly from our favorite myths, and we are going to offer you a final blessing here to go out. All right, you three ready? And I see David's got us all up on screen. Okay, here we go.
There's some good in this world, and it's worth fighting for.
You are stronger than you believe. You have greater powers than you know.
And may the force be with you. Good night, everyone.